Okay, welcome everyone. Um, we're really pleased to have you with us on Friday, January 21st, 2022. I know quite a few of you are starting school this week or next week, and I know things have been tight. We really appreciate you joining us to hear about OER Commons and how later this semester you'll be uploading and sharing some of the OER that you're creating in your classrooms, specifically your syllabi and your anti-racist assignment or module. And that's what today is all about. This is Una Daly, the director of CCC OER, and I'm sorry to report that James Clapper-Grossklag can't join us today. He had a meeting that ended up he couldn't avoid, and he's sorry he couldn't join us. So anyway, I want to do some introductions here, and we'll just, I think, touch on the spring webinars. These are kind of the workshops we've been having in January. And then we're going to turn it over to Megan and Joanna, who you're going to meet now. So I want to introduce Joanna Schmitzy, who is a learning specialist at ISKME, actually, which is the organization that runs OER Commons. You want to say hello, Joanna?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm a high school biology teacher is where my start happened, nationally board certified. And right now I work with students who have severe and profound disabilities in their separate setting classrooms. And for a while now, I've also been working with ISKME as a professional learning specialist, really looking at the intersection between the need for openly licensed resources and how that really empowers educators to make changes to make sure that their resources can build responsive and sustaining positive cultural and linguistic identities. So we've been doing this work in North Carolina, in the US Virgin Islands, in Wisconsin, and really excited to be here with you all today as you continue this really important and meaningful and hard work of anti-racist education and curriculum materials and courseware. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and really excited to be with you.
Well, thank you very much, Joanna. We're really thrilled to have you. And next, I'd like to introduce Megan Simmons, training and design lead at ISKME. And I think many of you may know Megan because she's been doing this great work for a long time. But Megan, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Una, and hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you today. And yes, I've been leading our training and design work at ISKME for over 13 years now. I can't believe that. I really skipped around education quite a bit because of burnout before I came to ISKME, and have just really enjoyed supporting all the different initiatives that we do with OER all over the world, really. And as Joanna mentioned, we've really been focusing the past few years on really supporting how folks are localizing, customizing, remixing resources to meet some real pressing needs, especially around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm going to share a little bit about, some of the other things that we've done, but just really excited to connect and hope this is, an ongoing collaboration that we can have with each other. And we are working, we've worked with a couple different community colleges in California over the years. We're working with Compton Community College right now on their ambitious goals to be 85 to 100% OER by 2035. So I don't know if any of your colleges have made bold statements like that, but we're kind of, a support group that helps make those happen too. So we'll show where a lot of this work is happening today, and I'm really excited to connect you with others that are doing this deep, really meaningful work. So thanks for having us.
Great. Thank you, Megan. And I didn't realize you'd been there 13 years. I think we've known each other for about a decade, but maybe it's been a little longer. Yeah, well, great. We're thrilled to have you. So I wanted to mention the February 4th webinar / workshop. It's to use to sort of get prepared. This is the first one of our monthly ones. which we're asking you to invite either department chairs or division leaders or other administrators within your college, because this is going to be a very interesting workshop, and there'll be several more in the spring, but this one is focusing on intersectionality, which I think many of you are familiar with from the course. It refers to how an individual or group social categories such as race, class, and gender are interconnected and create overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or privilege. And so we have a facilitator, Andre Cheng Feng, who is an advocate for health-centered education. Andre is an amazing guy. He's getting his PhD at Claremont College, and he's also an adjunct in teacher ed there. He's a graduate of Pasadena Community College, so I know we've got some folks online from there. And he taught math in the LA Unified School District Middle School for 12 years. So he's got a lot of experience in education, and he's really focusing on trauma-centered healing in education. So we hope that you can get some of your administrators to come to this one and to explore the concept of intersectionality and how that affects not only dynamics in the classroom, but also within the institution itself. And just a quick reminder, the webinars this spring will be on the first Friday of the month at noon, and all of these are open to your administrators. And so please encourage them. And to make that a little bit easier to register, we created a bit.ly for that. And you can see the bit.ly there. It's bit.ly OFAR Web 22. And Liz, if you could put that in the chat window, I'd really appreciate it.
I already did.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I can't see the chat. And we just wanted to let you know that we're going to be asking you to take a short survey after the workshop today, and asking you just kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down. It's like a really quick questionnaire. Our researchers suggested that we should do this. Of course, it's best practice. And so we just want to know how it's going for you. And it's completely anonymous. And I think at this point, we're going to turn it over to the amazing team from ISKME. So let me stop sharing and let you folks jump in. And are there any questions? I'm sorry. Are there any questions before we move on? Please feel free to unmute yourself. Liz, were there any in the chat window that maybe I missed? There's been a lot in the chat.
I do see Andre has his hand up though.
Sorry.
Sorry, I don't.
Okay. Do feel free to just pop stuff in the chat window, and Liz and I and everyone else will do their best.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. We want to jump right in because we have a lot to cover, and we hope it won't be too overwhelming, but we really do want you all to know that we are a support for you. We're excited about this work. We want to help in any way we can, and let's just jump right in. So what we have planned for you, and hopefully can everybody see my slides? I hope you can. Maybe just let me know. Sometimes Zoom is funky if there's a problem. But we want to let you know about, you already have this collaborative space on OER Commons, which is our digital library that we launched back in 2007 to support great OER initiatives like this one. And I'm going to hand it to Joanne after I just introduce quickly the space that we have for all of California to collaborate around OER. She'll jump into a little bit about the what and why, a nice little refresh of OER and open pedagogy. And then we're going to actually give you all some time to practice finding and sharing OER, because I know some of you are still looking for resources that can help move your anti-racist work forward. And then we'll show just quickly the authoring tool and template that we created to help you all in hopefully an easy way to create and publish the resources that you are working on for this project. And then we'd love to have some time at the end. Hopefully we will have time at the end to talk a little bit more about your action plans and next steps that you want to take. So that's our plan. And first off, I just wanted to share a little bit about the space that is available to you all to do this great OER work on OER Commons. Joanna just shared the published slides there, but here are a couple links to some things that we'll look at together, but we're going to look at a community college hub that we have for all of California community colleges, all 117 of you, to collaborate around OER. And then we will take a look at the group quickly and see that this is a space where you can utilize to organize resources. There's already some great stuff in there from last year and that we will share today. And a place where you can save resources, submit resources that you find on the web that you want to include and share with this cohort, publish resources, have group discussions, and also just see what everybody's working on. So let me just quickly jump over to OER Commons. If you haven't seen it yet, this is our digital library that we launched back in 2007. Is really a place to access all this great OER that was being shared mostly by higher ed initially, and now it's branched out in all education levels. And over the years, we have become more than just a library. Of course, you can search, and Joanna will walk you through how you can use our search, advanced search, and some of our filters to find resources for your content areas or specific keywords and education levels. But we do have hubs, which are a collaborative space and platform for specific projects that are happening with OER all over the world. So you'll see some of them are focused on state initiatives. Some of them are around specific projects. There's California there, but there's a lot of great OER initiatives happening all over the world, and the hubs is one of the places where some of this work is happening within the library. And we think of the hubs as kind of like your own wing of the library. So back in 2019, the Michelson Foundation actually funded the creation of this hub. And I will say we're giving it a refresh. So if you have any feedback on this, we would love to hear it. But basically, this is a space for all California community colleges to access resources that have been curated. We have some collections of resources here of some open textbooks and open courseware that are being widely used across the states. We also have groups for all of the 117 colleges. So hopefully you see your group in here if it's, they're all arranged alphabetically. So you can click on your group to find a space where perhaps some colleagues are doing some OER collaboration or will start to do some OER collaboration. We have about 400 faculty members that are a part of this hub. So it's not everybody in the whole state, but there's a good amount. But what I wanted to focus on today was just introducing you to this community college consortium for OER group. We have a couple cross college groups, like there's a student advocacy group where students are advocating for OER and sharing resources there. But this is the one that we have created for you all. And in here, you'll see these different folders of resources. This is from the previous year's cohort. So if you're interested in seeing, what they created for their projects, here's one that was created for OER for social work and human services. So you can click on the resource to learn a little bit more about it and then actually see the resource. Here it is. And they have shared their syllabus, the sample assignment and reading list as part of their project here. So if you're curious to see what others have done, we have a folder for you all for this particular project, and we have a template that we created to help kind of guide your authoring. But I also wanted to share just some equity resources that we have put in here that we thought might be helpful for you all as you're thinking about deeply about designing and evaluating resources that you can use to support this important work. So we have a few things in here. We have a template from Branch Ed, which is an organization actually based out of Austin, Texas, that supports minority serving institutions, their teacher education programs. And they've created a template to guide authoring and some instructional design supports. We also included a few evaluation guides and rubrics in here that folks are using to assess resources in their courses for bias, or screen them for diversity, equity, inclusion, cultural relevancy, things like that. So I just wanted to kind of point to a few things that are kind of happening in the OER space that are relevant to this work. This is the rubric that I mentioned that Branch Ed has created to support educators in assessing resources. So when you click on their PDF, you can see it's a pretty substantial rubric that they've used to assess resources in these different areas, looking at if a resource is learner-centered, if it's critical, if it is culturally sustaining, and universally designed for learning. So we just kind of wanted to share a few things that might be helpful for you all that other folks are working on in this space. And we also included a few examples of some resources that have been created to look at things like bias in the classroom, and assess things for different areas around diversity and equity and inclusion. So just wanted to quickly share that with you all. And Joanna's going to kind of walk you through this a little bit more and how you can join and all that. But if you don't have a account yet on OER Commons, you will need one to log in and join this group. And just by clicking on sign and register, you can do that there, and you'll get, once you fill out the info, you'll get a confirmation email. So I'll just put that in the chat if you want to, have that ready to go so you can join our group. But I'll stop sharing and hand it to Joanna to walk us a little bit deeper through this wonderful OER space. And we're just really excited to have you be a part of this community.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. This is Una. I just want to interject really quickly. So last year's cohort submitted their syllabi and their assignments through a Google form. And then our team created that folder and uploaded it. And we are so thrilled that Megan and her team are working with us this year to expand that, and to give all of you now the agency to participate in this community by contributing your resources directly. And Megan and Joanna are going to tell us about that next. So just, I wanted to set a little bit of that because we have some folks who participated last year and may have wondered how their artifacts got up there. And so just wanted to let them know. So please continue, Joanna.
Thanks, Una. Would love to just give you guys a minute to really ground yourselves in what is OER. So an invitation to make the chat box blow up. There is no necessarily wrong answer here, but rather just giving you a chance to, when you describe OER and you describe open pedagogy, like what is it? So just the what for right now. So. I love this. Make sure that you're kind of reading through it as they pop up. And I'm sure the chat box will keep going for a few minutes. Feel free to add to your definition, say more as you're reading what other folks are saying and contributing as your brain keeps going, right? That's one of the beautiful things about open is it's not static, it's dynamic. You know, we did give you two things to describe, right? The OER, which are maybe more a noun, and the open pedagogy, which is maybe more a verb. So if you already answered and you want to take a minute to think a little bit about that, like what's the connection between the noun part and the verb part? Yes. Yes, so we see people kind of describing some of the noun part, free textbooks, free source, like open sources, specific assignments. And we can't necessarily, I don't want to leave off that non-disposable part of the assignment, right? A really key part of OER and open pedagogy is this idea that these assignments are meaningful and valuable and have long-lasting impact. And Alan and Jesus are both kind of talking a little bit about that open pedagogy piece, the verb allowing students to have a role, a say, an input to influence their education. Yes, Feather mentions utilizing student work for teaching and letting students see themselves as leaders and teachers. Dwayne says truly flipping the classroom. Yes. What a really cool educational system like the next generation will have, right? When I think of myself as a teacher in the classroom, and then I think of like, wow, I learned off of the overhead projector where my teacher was like writing words and we spent, 90 minutes copying notes off the board, and how much this next generation that is currently, new to the teaching force is doing now. And then what will it be like when students have truly grown up in the OER world and then get to be teachers and teacher leaders? Yes, so that's kind of this what, right? Like, what is this work and why does this drive us? Because a lot of you already mentioned the equity piece of it and the student engagement piece of it and student empowerment piece of it. And so I do just want to ask you to really dig into your why of using OER to help you to drive your anti-racist work. Right. So those of you who are Simon Sinek followers and think about like the golden circle and really saying like, okay, I know the what. It's more work to do the open. It is. But why do I do it? And why is it so important for my anti-racist work? Because there are lots of reasons people mentioned, like democratizing education. And that's a big key of ISKME's work as well. But there are many pieces of democratizing education that we have to dig deeper to actually get to where we're truly being anti-racist. So how is it that OER is essential or necessary for you to be anti-racist in a lot of different ways, right? It's still a super open-ended question, but let's just take a minute there and let your brain really own like why OER to be anti-racist. Mm. Deborah, I'm going to just put you on the spot and ask if you want to unmute and speak a little bit about what you shared.
Well, OER, when I first thought of OER, I think so many of my colleagues said, oh, this is a free textbook. And I realized that although it is free, it is not necessarily inclusive. As a matter of fact, it might be even worse than publishers' books. So what OER allows us to do is to bring in voices from, I hate to use the term persons of color because not everybody's lumped into that, but certainly minoritized and marginalized voices and perspectives from all disciplines, and allows for the intersectionality of that as an addition. So that's how I think about it. Although it is a big lift, right? When I say that, I recognize in saying that what a big lift that is for us to do.
Thank you, Deborah. Yes, and I do curriculum and courseware review, and to add to what you're saying about, are we truly looking at whose voice is centered in this work? Whose voice is left out of this work? And is it left out purposefully, or is it left out maybe a little bit because people didn't know better? And who gets access to being a voice in the work? And so I think, Deborah, yours just really resonated with that, taking it further beyond. I think a lot of folks identified the cost. That cost is a barrier for many of our students, but then who are they seeing when they open the book? What are they reading about? I don't know if folks saw the article that was just published about Wharton Business School, and what 25% of the students thought that the average income in America was a six-figure. Yes, what are people seeing when they open textbooks, when they see assignments, and what a value OER can be, because we can change that. We can change what they're reading. We can change the pictures that they're seeing. And a lot of textbook companies are now employing DEIA professionals to make an attempt, but then they're still locking it down and letting cost be a barrier. So Deborah, thank you for being willing to speak into that and help lead this work.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm. So we have our why, right? We have our why, we know the what, and I hope that your why, if I were part of this group, which, I kind of just want to come hang out, is what my heart says. Oh, these people are so inspiring. I want to just come be around them. But I hope that your why continues to change over time, because the work of being anti-racist won't stop when this cohort ends. And of course, the work that you do to be anti-racist is a generational work through your students as well, especially if you're being explicit about it. So I just wanted to give you a chance to really see a resource on OER Commons and make sure that, you're kind of aware of how easy / difficult will it be to do this anti-racist work in OER? Because just like Deborah said, it's hard. It takes a lot bigger commitment to do the open work, especially at your level, because it is easy to just say oh, here's the textbook, and I don't have to worry about how much it costs. I don't have to worry about these other things because I have so many other obligations. So I want to give you a few minutes to look at this resource. I'm going to put the link in the chat box if you don't have the slide deck open to follow along. And I just want to invite you to look at this resource. So it's a community college resource. They said it could also be used in high school. I don't know who on here is an economist, but I did figure that most of us can probably access this level of content and think about your anti-racism work here when we talk about economic terms. And so when you click on it, This is just the instructor overview. So of course, just click next. And page 2 is really the meat of this resource. I chose one that's shorter so that you can just access it. I would envision that this is maybe a page in a chapter. This is mentioned just as like an introduction to some economic terms. Maybe this is something that you might use in your course as kind of like a springboard, one of those to like stimulate discussion amongst your students. But I just want to give you the kind of prompt. What do you notice about this resource? And as you can tell, it's a very vague question again, but what do you notice about this resource in the frame of OER and in the frame of anti-racism? So we'll take about 5-ish minutes. When I see the chat box really going, I'll know that we're ready to discuss as a group. But just take a few minutes, read that resource, look over it on OER Commons. And as you're noticing, you can make the chat box blow up, or if you want to hold all your thoughts and then press enter at the end, that's fine too. So again, the guiding question is, what do you notice about this resource in regards to OER and anti-racism? And I'm going to be comfortable with some silence as we work. So we'll take about 4 more minutes. And if we see the chat box going, maybe we'll chat earlier, but. About 1 more minute to share in the chat box. Yes. So when I chose this one, my husband's an economist, so I have just enough knowledge of just how much room the discussion of economics has to go in being anti-racist, is maybe a good way to say it. I want us to take a minute just to try, and when we come at this with our anti-racist view, there feels like nothing to put on like the plus side, right? Like everything seems to be on the delta side. Like, what would we change about this? And of course, in just a minute, we'll remind ourselves this is OER, so hooray, we get to change it. But I do just want to invite you to take a minute to take that lens off and just look at, is there anything in this that is value or has the opportunity to be valuable? And you might say no, and that is okay. Is there a context where you would see this? Yes, go ahead, Christine, if you want to unmute.
Yes. So I always weave in economics when I teach political science. The only thing that may be useful is maybe the definitional gross national product. I don't teach economics this way. The way I would do this and has an anti-racist framework is to sort of, weave in global slavery. And just give like specific example, because people understand prostitution and people understand slavery, but not as sex slavery or prostitution as slavery. So I would talk about gross national product, but then I would then put in the context of Thailand, and Thailand's government has created an economy based on prostitution, which then adds to their gross national product. Then you make it the anti-racist part is to explain that the International Monetary Fund and also investors, in the big 7 countries, which is the United States, which is France, which is Great Britain, those former colonies, they're the ones that invest in these countries to make it economically grow, to increase their GDP, increase their gross national product, and improve their return on investment. I mean, that's how I would, there's no application, that is strictly definitional. The fact that there's even a citation, which is fine, 2004, that's a little old. I mean, I don't ask students to cite things from that old, right? That's a problem. So I know there's a lot of work that someone did this. I don't mean to throw them under the bus. I hope none of you wrote it, but that's how I teach economics. Anyways, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Christine. Yes, so I chose this knowing that it has a lot of opportunity for this group to discuss and share what are the different ways that this could be used. And I think a lot of you hit on what I saw. At the root, this was probably trying to offer some initial definitions and maybe initial discussion. And sometimes an interesting thing that we know that our students like is when we give them something with a lot of problems and we say, let's talk about this, let's dissect this, how could we talk about it, right? There's kind of research on the hairy arms of if you've heard of that reference in animation, if you put hairy arms on it, then people notice the hairy arms and they want to change that part of it. But one of the reasons that I said, is there anything value about this is this might be a really great opportunity to invite you. We'd like to invite you to leave a few comments on the resource. If you have an account and you're logged in, this is a great time to leave some of your comments and share that passion and share have you thought about this, or gosh, this would be a great place to, as Christine said, bring in Thailand and talk about that and use that as a spur for discussion, or even just say gosh, I can see this being a spur for discussion around these other things. So when you are contributing on OER Commons, what we do really want to make sure to point out to you is how you can kind of leave these star references. That helps people, of course, when they are searching for things. It helps if you leave a comment as well, because that helps share so that other folks can see it. But we do want to note that when, as many of you said, oh, I hope someone in this group didn't write it. When you put yourself out there, it can be a barrier to folks putting themselves out there if they feel that all that will be seen of their resources, what we would change about it. And so I just want to invite you, when you're on and you're reviewing and you're seeing things, especially things that are harmful, that that we might do that. You can also, if a resource seems extremely harmful, you can report the resource, and OER Commons can look back at the resource and look at where there might be harm and reach out to the author and those sort of things. But sometimes even more powerful is the ability to do what we're going to talk about for the rest of today, which is remix the resource. So you're like, hey, I need a way to do, I can see what to change about this. And because this is openly licensed, because this has a CC BY license, anyone can remix it. And especially if you're on the platform, it's really easy. You just click the remix button. And then you click the drop down because we might want to remix section 1. Some of you said we should add another picture because we should compare the wealth right next to the poverty. Great, you can add that picture and your reference. And then we might want to go ahead and change this main content. We can do all of that. And that's the beauty of OER, especially of OER on the platform. Let's see, Feather, if you want to unmute.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm reading this and I'm like, okay, while I'm disgusted by what's being described is how we describe different economies, this person, and I think someone mentioned it too, is being neutral with just trying to say, these are the facts about how things are described. Are we expecting, was this written by someone or a textbook? I may have missed that.
I think it was written by an individual.
Okay, written by an individual who was just stating definitions. Should we be expecting this person to have added their opinions or just add additional facts about why things are the way they are and why these things are wrong based on data and, feedback, 50, 60 years after establishing some of these terms?
Yes.
Don't just take these facts, but add other facts to them that frame it anti-racist, or at least bring other things into it.
Right. So that kind of, again, is the pro and con of OER. Is in OER, it's open. What we don't necessarily know. Let's see, I'd have to look back at their description. So they're just describing different models, and they want folks to understand how studying global stratification, right? So it seems like they were just making a reading. Maybe this is a homework assignment that they're giving to students to read prior to discussion in class. And so this is kind of that great thing about, well, this is here, I can change it, I can expand it, I can make it so much more than this, to lots of your points around what can I do to incorporate student voice and to broaden the perspective. Una, I think we needed like a whole 90-minute session on this particular resource. Let me say one other thing, and then I'll let Donna and Andrea unmute. When you hit remix, and this is what we were going to get to in just a second, the only way you can remix is if you have an account. So that'll kind of start to answer some of these questions. If you have an account, then the remix button will show up. If you don't have an account, you might still see this resource, but you can't remix it, because when you remix it, it automatically creates a copy. It's kind of like Google Docs, like file, make a copy. So it has made a copy and it's automatically saved under my items. You can see up here, my items. And so it makes this draft. I can change the title. So I might say, describing countries in anti-racist economic terms. And then I can change each of the sections and I can make it what I want. It only changes mine. And what else do I want to show you? I want to show you that when someone makes a remix, it shows up under theirs. So that if Joanna made a remix of this and I published it, then it would show that there was a remix made of this by Joanna. So anyone who found this describing countries would be able to find Joanna's remix. This was actually remixed from a different source, so I can back up to where this person got the original source, which was created from an OpenStax by Rice University. So you can see where this person they remixed it and made it something different of their own. Let's see, Donna and Andrea.
Well, you probably want to move on. I was just gonna, I think Feather brought up a really interesting point, and we could probably talk for another 2 hours on just that, about making those, like, and no matter what it is, there's going to be an ideological sort of positioning, even if the point is just to, use some terms and describe those terms, right? And I wonder, this is something I think about for myself, is to what extent, like, the anti-racist piece comes in by just like labeling it like, now let's take an anti-racist point of view to this, as opposed to like, here's some facts, and then piquing the student's curiosity in terms of like, well, why are those things the way they are? Like, I think that's a habit of thinking that is better to teach than just like, in this one case with Jamaica, let's look at it as an anti-racism thing, but rather, right, like, instead of accepting that things just kind of are the way they are, because if you don't try to explain, then a student could easily draw some incorrect conclusions about why the society is stratified in these certain ways, right? Oh, well, they just need to, blah, 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 right? And so, but instead of kind of hammering our own ideological position onto our students, it seems better to pique that curiosity and develop that curiosity and that kind of yearning for sort of the truth, right? Like truth with a capital T, and to see our society with clear eyes. So anyway, sorry, I know you want to move on. I'll shut up.
No, thank you, Donna. Andrea?
Yeah, thanks. I teach economics, and development economics is what my master's is in. And I wasn't able to, I was so busy reading the chat, and then I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand, but I wouldn't use this resource. That was my first reaction, but I will also say that this is going to be emblematic of pretty much any resource you see in economics. This is actually, frankly, one of the better ones that I've seen, which is super sad, because it's just saying one theory. And most economics texts will say, these are high income countries, these are low income countries, and we need to increase income of the low income countries with the help of the high income countries, and completely ignore all of the colonialism and all of the things that made it that way. And so I would personally, there's nothing out there that I would use. So I would probably, the way I'm happy to chat with anybody about how I usually teach this when I do my module on development economics, but it is especially, I think poli-sci's in a similar position. There are some of us in disciplines where there's just nothing, and we are building from the ground up because we have to almost take everything and then we just have to contextualize it for students. You give, the students have their text, you have the materials, and you go, this is what's typically said. Let's talk about all of the other stuff that's not baked in there that should be baked in there. And yeah, it's a difficult uphill battle, and it's a really, really problematic discipline that's super interesting for a lot of reasons. So I just wanted to kind of add that.
Yes, thank you. I get to hear so much of my husband's talk about economics, and I knew, like, okay, here's a place where there are many opportunities for this growth. And I love that someone mentioned in the chat, Kim, assigning groups of students a page to remix, see what they come up with to make it more globally and culturally sensitive, responsive, sustaining. Andrea, I would love to just be like, hey, Andrea, go ahead and hit remix and remix this for us. So we have an example of what remixing looks like. And I really, truly hope that as you are going on to talk about like the product, what you're going to produce, what you're going to share, I saw this as a great opportunity for you to see, like, as Andrea said, there are things out there. There are things that have been created. And especially my point about like static versus dynamic, like we are going to continuously have to make changes to our resource to be anti-racist as we move forward. Because even in the past 10 years in our understanding of gender non-binary, we have to continue to change resources, and we're going to have a better understanding of different parts of identity that we need to change and be responsive and sustaining to as we go through. So, of course, I was going to talk a lot more about licensing, but I'll zoom through this and just leave this here for you if you need a little help. For that particular resource, because it is CC BY, you can modify and adapt it. And that's really the key, right? And so there's a game here. We're not going to play it. We don't have time, but it's a fun game if you're needing to practice, or if you're wanting to even just share with your students, like how if you teach them about Creative Commons and why you're allowed to make those adaptations. I'm not sure if you all do a series with your students on what OER are, but that's a really powerful thing to empower them to know what OER are. Our next kind of goal was for you to do some searching on the platform, but maybe you've already gone down that rabbit hole and I didn't even have to say anything to you about it. But I do just want to encourage you as you're searching to save them to our group, because that allows folks to find the same resources that you're finding, even if what you're finding is a resource that desperately needs some adaptations. You could make a folder in our group of like resources to adapt. You could leave a comment on the resource and say like, here are the opportunities that lie in this resource for us to adapt. But at ISKME, we stand for the Institute of the Study of Knowledge Management in Education, which is this idea that we really struggle in education with, okay, Joanna is searching for something to teach economics, but Andrea is searching for something, and we're both spending all this time searching for or creating things that no one else can find. So when you find something and you leave a comment, you're helping contribute to the expansion of that knowledge so that people aren't spending all their time searching and curating, but they're able to find things a little bit quicker. So as Una said, what we have done for this year's cohort is create a template to help guide you when you're ready to share your contribution. As part of this cohort, you are going to share something at the end. Maybe it's your syllabus, maybe it's a assignment that you create, maybe it's student work. Whatever it is, we have created a template, and here's the link. And so we just want to invite you to take a minute and click the remix button on it, just so that you can remix it. And you might put your name in it. So I'll put Joanna Scamitzi, you might put your name on it. And I'm just going to put like test here, just as a placeholder, so that then I can click save. And we already talked about this a little bit before, because you guys were kind of seeing where things go. So I want to invite you, if you haven't yet clicked the remix, to do that. Maybe add your name at the top and then click save. And then you can go to my items. And you'll see your draft there at the top because it's sorted. So anytime that I want, I can go back to it. I can edit it. I can keep working on it. I might not be ready. It looks like it's published, but it's not. It's still a draft. So it's not viewable. It's not searchable yet until I publish it. And so I can click edit. And then after I've made all of my changes, we just wanted to show you the last part before you hit publish. This template was made to give you some, yes, Monica, don't worry, trust the process is exactly right. Yes, the goal is for you to go ahead and have that in your My Items. We crafted an explanation a little bit here, but a lot of this are things that you will delete. So you'll delete this main part here and add your own information. And then in section 2, we've given a little prompt here about describing how OER and open pedagogy help your class to be anti-racist. And you can delete, because you're the owner, you can delete it. You don't have to publish it right this minute. We are here to help and coach as you go through this. I know that you have coaches for your cohort that will help you work on your item. I know you know my enthusiasm for this, so I'm just going to come like hang out in sessions. You can find me and pester me. Let's really create some meaningful and changing aspects. And so this is here. You can this can be student facing. So the piece here can be student facing, and you can add instructor notes that are only instructor facing. And then when you are ready to publish, you hit next. And this is where you describe your resource. I think the OFAR program does want you to leave some of this in place, just so that there's a common thread across all of your resources that identify your resource as part of the OFAR cohort. And then, Una, I don't know, have you all decided on a license, or are folks choosing that?
Yeah, we had a discussion about this. Some of that is, yeah, it has to be a Creative Commons license. We've discussed some of the benefits of using the least restrictive, which is CC BY, but that it does remain up to you to choose that. Now, if you're putting student work up there, that's a little bit different. You need to work with your students. And I think this was part of the workshop, the Canvas workshop. You need to work with your students on whether how to choose the license, or there may be some students who don't want to participate in a public forum. So that becomes a little more interesting. So this license would be for all of the resources. Is that it, Joanna? All of the resources that are included, or can each resource within the template have its own license?
Yeah, each resource can have its own license. Of course, that's up to you as a cohort if you're going to decide on a license that's common across them. But otherwise, anytime you make a resource, you choose the license itself. Mhm.
Okay, that's
awesome. And then you hit publish. And like we talked about, it's not static. You can edit it. You can leave it and remix it to show that this is like version 2 of what, kind of how textbooks have that, like, oh, here's the 2018 version, here's the 2019 version. And so really our goal was to help you see the power that lies in being able to create here. In this slide deck, we did just kind of describe how to do that. And we have all of like 1 minute for you to share some next steps you want to take, or ask some questions, or that sort of thing. Una will let us know what you need from us next, but we're here, we're excited. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joanna. I was just seeing a question here from Patrick. He said, for students who are uncomfortable with the publishing aspect, is it possible for someone to publish OER anonymously? Well, not really. The minimum publishing with an open license is that you get attribution, which means that you specify who the author is. If a student is uncomfortable with the publishing aspect, then perhaps their materials should not be published, because this is really a student choice. They obviously would share them with you. Depends on what your classroom agreements are, whether they get shared within the classroom as well. But if they are not comfortable with publishing, then please don't. That just is inappropriate. This is about student agency, and some students may truly feel they don't want their materials published, and that's perfect. It's perfectly fine within the program, and is actually the right thing to do. Does that help, Patrick?
Awesome. Any other questions or things that you all need? If not, we'd love to have you either, as you leave, share a next step that you're thinking, or just whatever is on your heart. So, and Liz put the survey, but we'd love to have you kind of blow that chat box up with what's on your heart, what's on your brain as you're leaving this session.
So Joanna and Megan, we may need to invite you back later in the semester. So I don't know if that's possible, but there may be some folks who might need some additional assistance, or you'll have to train the leadership team. But it seems pretty easy to use. And I thank you once again, Megan and Joanna, for putting together the template. I mean, you did an excellent job on that. But I suspect that we will have some challenges as we start filling it in. So.
Yeah, and we're here, and feel free to call on us anytime. I don't know, Una, you can coordinate how that happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'm also for those of you that have the links to the slides, I'm actually just I know we shared a lot of links, and I'm just adding a last slide with everything, just so you can see it. So you're like, where was that tutorial that she shared? Where was the link to the group? So hopefully that's easy for y'all to access. And
oh, thank you. That's super helpful.
Don't be intimidated. We're here. You can do this. And you can also just attach resources too. We didn't really explicitly show that, but we do have a tutorial video on the hub that we'll link to. But you can, if you have things that are in Word or PDFs that you want to just attach, if that's like kind of an easy way for you to share, you can do that as well. So lots of ways to share your resources in a way that feels comfortable to you. And we're here to support you every step of the way.
Well, thank you so much. Last summer we were doing this on our own, and believe me, it was the blind leading the blind. So it's amazing to have you and Joanna in here to help us with this.
Great.
Yes, next time we'll do it 90 minutes. So
yeah, I'm sorry we underestimated.
oh gosh, I think it was probably just right for Friday, but I think there's a lot of great discussion that we could continue to have. So I'm going to hop off as well, and we will look forward to being in touch and seeing you around.